Hello, and welcome to Now Where Were We? A series of short videos about the history of Olympia, Lacey, and surrounding areas. Your host for this program is Deborah Ross. In this series, Deb takes us to locations that inform us about the history of our community. She also visits with local historians. We welcome your feedback and suggestions.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Now Where Were We? An ongoing series of short videos about the history of Olympia, Lacey, and surrounding areas. I'm Deborah Ross, and today is another segment in our series that I'm calling Iconic Intersections. That is, intersections that speak to some theme in our area's history. And today the theme is the indie music scene in Olympia, particularly in the 80s and 90s. Socrates once said, "All I know is that I do not know," and he was considered the wisest man on earth. Well, I know that I do not know much about the indie music scene, and so today I have as my guest Len Balli, who is the curator of an exhibit that recently closed at the Washington State History Museum about the indie music scene in Olympia. Welcome, Len.
Oh, thanks. It's great being here. Really appreciate you having me on the show.
So, Len, can you start with a brief tutorial on the various genres of indie music that were around in this area in the 80s and 90s?
Yeah, Olympia was kind of home to a lot of different types of music. You had like your sort of dance pop music that bands would play, like Beat Happening. You had your singer-songwriters like Lois Maffeo. And then you had some more sort of hardcore music that went on around the time, like bands like Unwound and Carp. They had some really sort of heavier music. And then, of course, from Olympia sprang the Riot Girl scene. So you had a lot of women playing music, like Bikini Kill, SleaterKinney, Team Dresch, things like that.
What, in your opinion, made Olympia the place where a lot of these music genres originated?
Yeah, well, I think the Evergreen State College was a very big influence on Olympia. Their radio station Chaos had a policy called the Green Line Policy, which made it so that 80% of their music had to be from independent record labels, and that was started by their program manager, John Foster, and that really brought a whole lot of music that probably wouldn't have heard in this town. And downtown is just like a great artist community.
And we are here at the home of, or at least the former home of, K Records, which is one of the first labels to start here in Olympia.
That's right. Calvin Johnson started off K Records, and he was eventually joined by Candace Peterson, so they co-owned it for a while. And now it's just Calvin again. But also, in addition to K Records, there was another record label in town called Kill Rock Stars. And that started off with a man named Slim Moon. And he did a lot of spoken word performance albums. And then he branched off into other music. He had a band, Witchy Poo. And then he also really fostered the Riot Girl music scene.
So are any of the bands that started or were fostered in Olympia, did they ever become famous?
Well, I would say probably the most famous band is SleaterKinney to come out of Olympia. Like, they are kind of all over the place these days. And but as far as like other bands, there wasn't a whole lot of national recognition. They were really kind of like underground music, so people in certain scenes and towns had heard of them and liked them, but like you were never going to see them on MTV or like playing in some like big arena festival. Kurt Cobain did, I think legend has it, wrote all of the songs from Nevermind here in Olympia.
And we have the Kurt Cobain House on the Olympia Historical Society website, which I think has now kind of become a place of pilgrimage for Cobain fans.
Not surprised, yeah.
Now, in the exhibit a revolution you can dance to. There was a series of displays about festivals that also happened in Olympia that celebrated the indie music and art and poetry scenes. So what were some of those festivals?
Well, I would say the festival circuit sort of got kicked off by Calvin Johnson when him and Candace Peterson did the International Pop Underground Convention. And that was the first big Olympia festival. It was like 6 or 7 days. They invited all of their favorite bands to come and play. And it took place downtown at the Capitol Theater. And it was just a big party, basically. And they had a ton of fun. And over the years, Pat Malley started up the Yo-Yo A Go-Go festivals, and they did about 4 of those, and also that branched off into Lady Fest that happened here. There was a Yeah Festival, and then there was a Homo A Go-Go festival that took place kind of in the late 90s, early 2000s. And by the time that happened, like the evolution of the festivals was more than just bands playing at the Capitol Theater. It expanded to workshops and, community groups. I think at like one of the Lady Fests, they had like a knitting circle that they did. But at the Homo Go-Go's, they did all kinds of workshops on benefiting LGBT youth. So it was really kind of a groundbreaking thing that they did.
One of the things that has really intrigued me and that I just starting to learn a little bit about was the whole show house scene or party house scene. And one of the reasons that we are here at the intersection of 8th and Jefferson is that it seems like a lot of that scene was happening near this intersection, but elsewhere as well. So can you tell me something about how that show house scene worked and what makes Olympia a place for that to have developed?
Well, once again, I think Evergreen comes to a big play in that because people don't want to live in the dorms. They want to live in town because it's close to downtown. Evergreen's kind of a walk to downtown, especially if you don't have a car. Buses at, the time only ran till like 11 o'clock. So if you wanted to see a show at the Capitol, you're hoofing it back to Evergreen at like 2 in the morning, which, isn't always the best in December. But, so people would migrate to the downtown area, West Side area, and they'd have a bunch of college kids in a house. So like on the west side, you had the Cooperative House, the ABC House. On the east side, you had the Alamo and the Phoenix House. And just, downtown here, you had the Track House where, a bunch of people living together, playing shows. Their friends are coming over. It'd be a lot of fun.
So are any of these party houses or show houses still in existence in Olympia?
I think you could still find a few of the older houses. Phoenix House probably still does some stuff, but because this is Olympia and it is a college town, you get a whole crop of new kids coming in all the time, and they make up their own houses and they do their own shows, and those shows are all different bands, so it's a lot of fun.
So the indie music scene is still alive and well in Olympia?
I think it's still around. It's not as prominent as it used to be. You can't just go downtown and find, like some band that you've seen like 80 times playing a show that night. You can occasionally, but you do find the shows here a little more infrequent, but they're still happening. People are still having a good time out there.
Well, thanks again, Len, and good luck with all of your searches into our history and your continuing participation in celebrating the history of Olympia.
Thank you so much. It was fun being here.